And Joshua, how do you vote?
Yeah, I'll abstain too since I wasn't there.
All right, so that motion passes.
All right, very good. Thank you. Well, today we're very fortunate to have with us a guest speaker, and I'm very excited to introduce Tanique McCullough. She is the director of the Winston-Salem Department of Transportation and also manages the work of the MPO. She has been in this position for over 10 years, and I'm excited that she's here because this gives us an opportunity to hear everything that our Department of Transportation is currently working on, and the MPO is working on, and their current efforts about our city. And hopefully through this conversation, we can begin to build a partnership so that we can, in the future, be able to better contribute to the work that they're doing and partner along the way. So Tanique, thank you for joining us this morning, and I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Good morning, Chairman Hoover and members of the committee. I thank you for having me this morning. I hope you can hear me. So this morning I thought I would just briefly talk about the Department of Transportation itself and what we are responsible for, and then just briefly touching on those things. And then I thought maybe my time would be better served to the committee for you all to then have an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have about specific things you have of interest of what we're doing, so that I can share those things with you, and then maybe that will also help you as you make decisions on how to move forward and how you're advising us on projects and goals that we have going forward. So the Department of Transportation is, I guess the way that we describe our mission is to move people and goods safely and efficiently along transportation systems that we have within the city and as they connect to the county and state routes. So our systems that we manage are planned, designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so that we look at a reduction in congestion and delay. Accidents and delays are minimized, and so that transportation choices are maximized. And that's a big thing for us, that we have many choices for individuals to move through our network to be able to provide for the goods and services needed for things that they're doing. So our staff are responsible for managing traffic engineering and maintenance. And traffic engineering and maintenance includes things like requests that we get for traffic calming, reducing the speeds on roadways, or providing for traffic control measures such as signs, markings, traffic signals within our system. And then we have the area of our transportation planning division, which is what was mentioned about our staff being the individuals that manage our MPO, our Metropolitan Planning Organization. And that responsibility is how we actually coordinate with NCDOT and our federal government for funding that comes to the area, and the way that we request that projects that we have in our city to collect some of those federal funds so that those projects can move ahead. And then we're also responsible for our off-street and on-street parking. That would be the staff that actually manages our parking decks, but also where we manage our on-street parking, where our meters are, and also where there's parking enforcement. And then another extension of our department is the management of the contract for our transit services, which is WISTA services. So our staff has oversight over the work that they do and helping them to plan for and the network of the routes and any improvements that come along with that. So with all of those responsibilities, we do have a lot of projects that we currently have in process. We've got several traffic sidewalk projects that we have currently in place to improve the network. And those sidewalk projects are moving through our federally funded process where we have city funds that provide the 20% match to the 80% federal funds that we receive to fund those sidewalk projects. We also have a lot of city bond funds that were allocated to provide for some safety projects throughout the city. And this was maybe 2 years ago that council approved $2 million to go towards projects that will address some areas that we've had some pedestrian incidents and accidents, or even areas that we've identified that has a high probability of pedestrian incidents and accidents, so that we can provide improvements. And so we've got staff working through a priority list of projects that we've already done, I think, at least 25% of that work, and a lot of that continues. And then other things that we have going forward, where you all did a review of our pedestrian plan and our bicycle plan. So all of those things are managed through our MPO staff, and then those plans come to you to help us prioritize future projects that we seek funding for. So our staff, in order to be successful on getting projects moved through the system, have the responsibility of continually coordinating with not only other departments within the city, but our city leadership, and then also coordinating with state and federal officials to make sure that whatever processes and policies are put in place to formulate how these projects are designed or managed are being carried out in accordance with their expectations so that the projects can be successfully completed. And I think the only other thing I wanted to say is to thank you all for the time and commitment that you have agreed to give to help advise us through our processes so that we can be successful in meeting the overall goal that I mentioned before, which is to delay accidents, to delay traffic congestion and reduce the number of accidents, but to also make sure that we are including transportation choices for individuals and all of the projects that we move ahead. So I kind of went through things rather quickly, but I would, if it's okay with you, Madam Chairperson, that I open the floor up for questions that anyone may have, specific to projects that we may be working on, or anything about transportation that I could provide.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Let me open the floor to any questions.
Hi, Tonique. It's Amy. I know we worked together a couple times over the years. I have two questions. One is just a clarification. It's my understanding that street sweeping, like keeping the streets clean and specifically bike lanes, that's done with stormwater management. That's not part of your department. Is that correct?
That's correct. Good morning, Amy, and thank you for that. Yes, you were very instrumental in helping to make sure that the street sweeping process actually moved to city operations because it used to be managed by outside contractors. And through a lot of the efforts that you had that you contributed towards and questions that you asked of the city. The city did take on the responsibility of bringing that equipment on, and I think it's actually being managed through our sanitation department. So they purchased the equipment, and our sanitation department actually coordinates the work of the street sweeping that occurs. And one of the benefits of the street sweeping that you were helpful in helping us to recognize is that by having our bike routes on a regular schedule, that helps to improve the safety for the bicyclists that want to ride along the paths that we've created along those networks. And so, but that is coordinated through our sanitation department.
Okay. And then the other thing I had was around, so you mentioned parking enforcement, and I assume that just means in the metered spots, making sure, you know, if people haven't paid, they get a little ticket or whatever. Do you guys handle, or does the police department handle, like parking in bike lanes, parking on sidewalks, those kind of infractions?
Those infractions are typically managed through our police department.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Sure.
Tanika, I know that the State Department of Transportation has created a unit called Integrated Mobility, and they're trying to adopt that language with a lot of things that they're doing so that people know and understand there's more to transportation than just four wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Have you given any thought to doing something like that within the city?
That's a very good question. So I would say that as far as the city is concerned, we are functioning in that way, even though we may not have integrated mobility in our title, such that the vast majority, or I would say 100% of our projects that we move ahead now make sure that we include options for all modes of transportation. And I think if you look at the funding decisions that City Council has made as far as the type of projects that move ahead, most of our projects over the last few years have gone towards making improvements for pedestrian, bicyclists, and other mobility options, and not as much has been invested in building new roads for just vehicle movement. So I think that there are a lot of coordinated efforts to make sure that networks are improved for vehicle movement, but it is to improve the vehicle movement with consideration of other modes of movement on those networks. So making sure that sidewalks are built and adequately of an adequate width to make sure that pedestrians feel safe. Where we can, putting in other bike lanes, or making sure that there's shared lanes for bicyclists on the routes that make sense. And then also adopting policies that address other mobility options, such as scooters and other things that may come to our communities.
Thank you. Yes, I applaud you on many of the things that are happening, and have happened over the last few years. It's just that sometimes that language that the citizens see and hear help them to understand a little better. And one of the reasons that I raised that question, I was listening to the presentation Matthew did to the Public Works Group, which we'll talk about later in the meeting. But one of the questions from the councilman was, well, how do we know that people are using these routes? Is there a way to track the numbers that are using these bicycle lanes that we're creating throughout the city? So with that, I almost felt a little like maybe they don't appreciate or understand the numbers that are out using the sidewalks or the bicycle lanes that are there. So I didn't know if some wording might help that or change that a little bit. But.
And what I would add is, we would lead to you all to help guide us in some of that. And so if there are things that we are not effectively communicating out to the public, or policies that we currently have in place that doesn't seem to share that message, then I invite you to challenge us on that and present those ideas through your committee to us so that we can begin to look at things a lot differently. Because sometimes we go through the process of trying to get things done in a certain way because it's the way we've done it. And we sometimes need that outside voice to help guide us along a different path that we can still meet those same goals, but do it a little bit differently and provide a different message of how we're doing and what we're doing.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions?
Morning, Timmy. This is Greg. Oh, good to see you. I wanted to know what the status of the Martin Luther King Jr. Drive streetscape project is at this time. Do you have any idea on the schedule and the implementation of that project?
Good morning, Greg. It is good to see you too. Unfortunately, I do not have an update on that project. That project is being managed by our engineering department. So I can get that information for you and share it with Matthew so that he can provide it to you and the committee at a later date.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Director McCullough? Well, Director, you're welcome to stay on with us if you'd like for part or the rest of the meeting. Or we do appreciate you being here today and sharing information with us. And we do hope to continue to build our partnership with you and to help be the advisory group that you want us to be.
Well, thank you for your time. I probably will leave because I do have another meeting that starts in about 20 minutes, but I do appreciate your giving me the opportunity to be here. And again, I'm available for any future questions that you might have, or look forward to our continued working relationships, and look forward to you all challenging us to work differently to meet the needs as identified through this committee. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on with the agenda. Next on the agenda is a marketing plan update. Again, I apologize that Sharon couldn't be with us today. There are she actually put together a draft of a marketing plan. She had 2 phases. I'm not sure that we have enough time today to cover the second phase, but I'll review with you her proposal for the first phase and then ask for feedback, comments, questions to what she is proposing for the phase 1. And phase 1 is short term. So, and short term, I mean like this month, April and May. So very short term. And then we'll begin to slide on into a longer term plan, which may then require a subgroup to work on and think about. So let's begin first with the phase 1. First is an educational component. That educational component would help our citizens know and understand our greenway, our trail, our bike lane issues that are out there, similar to what Amy brought up, that can be reported to CityLink. So it would just be maybe utilizing Instagram, Facebook, and other marketing social media that they utilize, just to let them know that if you spot a problem, see a problem or an issue, that 311 is where you go to seek help for that. The second one is informative, and it is to, hope you will support this, but to publicize our monthly meetings. There are a couple other city departments that are out there, or I should say advisory groups, the Appearance Committee and the Planning Committee, where they will post on social media monthly the upcoming committee meetings that are going on. And that allows for the public to be aware of the committee and then also to participate in those meetings if they so choose. I think last month the question was raised, do we have anyone that participates in our meetings from the public or views our meetings from the public? And I think that there are a few that maybe watch the recorded meetings each month. There are about 6 to 11 people that will tune in to the recorded versions. And then I actually met with an individual this last month who says that he either watches the live meeting, which he may be today, or he will watch the recorded version on occasion, just to see what's going on. So we do have some interest out there, and it would be nice if that could grow and we could possibly get some feedback. And then the third piece to the short-term plan is, we talked about this a little bit last month, is to advertise Bike Month. And the two things we picked up for Bike Month so far are the May 14th event called Bike More, that's in Ardmore, and it's at 10 a.m. And the second piece is on May 18th, the Ride of Silence at 7 p.m. So that is the short-term plan. I will open it up for questions, comments, and any ideas on other things we can hit within the next couple of months.
Hi, Carol. I have a couple
Hi,
of
Kim.
questions. If we, I'm in favor of having people from the public informed and attending these meetings. Would we have a Q&A part of our meetings, or an opportunity for participants to use this as their own 311 sort of option?
I have noticed in the calls that I make and some of the viewings I've done on other sites across the state that they do have at the very beginning of every meeting a open comment section for the public. Being on Zoom, when we have these meetings, I understand, and Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that people that want to attend in person and ask questions, they can write in ahead of time and we'd actually know when they're attending. With that, I'll segue to say, Matthew and I were talking yesterday, and meetings are going to be in person again. So starting in April, we will be meeting in person. I was going to save this till the end of the meeting. So at that particular time, people will be able to come to meetings. So we probably should add to our minutes in the future, right after the minutes, that there will be a section for public comment.
Great.
And we may need to create, if there are not already rules around that, because I've also seen that written from the other cities, that those comments, that if they want to make a comment, they need to request ahead of time. So we might need to put that on our agenda. I'll look at some of the other cities, and Matthew may know if that's the way that you usually organize that particular part of the agenda.
So yeah, I think we would want to get some kind of heads up beforehand if people are able to do that, and if not, we would have a sign up sheet at the meeting so people could sign up to make a comment. There may be a limit on how much time they have, just so we have enough time for the rest of the agenda. But it's certainly something we could add to the agenda, is a portion of the meeting dedicated for public comments.
I'm looking forward to meeting you all in person.
Mhm.
Sounds great.
Me as well.
And then my other question, for Bike Month, do we have something planned for bike to school or bike to work in terms of promoting a particular day or?
So I can handle that question. So we have a Safe Routes to School non-infrastructure grant. We had received $250,000 from NCDOT to for this multi-year project to encourage biking and walking to and from schools. And part of the work, what we did was hire a consultant to manage that project. And part of their work is actually to help promote those events at the schools. So we really do rely on the schools to help with those because we can't organize those events for all of the schools in the district. But what we can give them are the resources and the information that they can then use to organize those events at the schools. So we are working on that. If you're aware of any schools that are particularly interested, parents, administration, teachers that want to have a bike or walk to school day event, we can connect them with all the resources they need to make that a successful event.
Yeah, I don't have any direct connections other than just my own kid's school, but I was wondering if it could be something as, simple as sending an email to all of the school principals and maybe build consensus on a particular day where all of the schools will agree on, this one particular day where we're going to be promoting kids biking to school. I think there is something similar in the fall.
So you're right. So there is a national date for Bike to School Day in the spring and then Walk to School Day in the fall. And we would follow those dates just for
Got it.
coordination with with other communities and to raise awareness about that. So and you're right. Yeah, a big part of the consultant's effort is making those relationships with the schools and sending them information and making those contacts. So that's all in the works. So.
Okay, great.
Thank you for your question.
Random question. Do the schools have limitations on who can bike or walk to school? My kids go to Sherwood Forest, and I seem to remember there was like a radius where outside of that radius you couldn't walk to school, but I could be way off base on that.
There is a radius, but I believe that radius is if you live within that radius, you are not offered bus service. So there needs to be some other transportation option, but there's no restriction on who can bike or walk to school. And outside of any restrictions that an individual school may have, but I'm not aware of any that are out there. So there shouldn't be any restrictions district-wide.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think one of those things, it seems this is a really big equity issue because just like a lot of things with education, the schools that have really great parent-teacher relationships and, PSA, PTA, whatever, groups, they're better able to execute on these bike to school days, but then other communities whose people are just scrapping by and maybe could really benefit from their kids learning how to, get to and from home and school without their parents or without having to get on the bus, who would really benefit from this don't get the resources. So I think whatever the consultant or we as a group or other agencies can do to kind of really make sure that we apply some support to these different areas, I think would be good. And another component, it's not just as easy as saying, oh, I want to bike to school. You need to know what route to go. You need to know what's the rules of the roads. And I think the most successful executions of these are group activities where they're group led. They're not just saying you and your parent go out and ride to school today on May 20th and have a good time. There's like a coordinated effort. People ride together. They meet at one location. They ride together. They provide some education and stuff. So I feel like it's an opportunity. It's one of those things that I feel like we miss the mark as a community because we only put a little bit of emphasis once or twice a year, and it actually takes a lot more to make it more accessible to people. And we have some really good examples, like Sherwood Forest does really good each year. And I think they've shown that it's possible. But to make that happen all across the city, I think would take a lot of effort from a lot of different people. So I think we just need to be honest that it's a great idea. And I think it's totally doable, but it takes a lot of different effort from a lot of different places. And especially if we want it to be more than just one day a year, we want to create the capacity for people to do it more often. So.
All right. So is everyone supportive of the short-term marketing plan? Any other thoughts or ideas? And does anyone know of any other events during Bike Month?
I'm starting to compile a smaller list. I'll have everything. I'll make a plan to provide some updates in April from some various folks I've heard from, and then what Winston can and other groups are doing. So I think we'll have more from me.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. All right, very good. Well, we're moving along faster on the agenda than I thought we would. This is good. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda is an update on Matthew's presentation, February 15th, of the Bicycle Master Plan Project Corridors Prioritization that was presented to the Public Works Committee. So Matthew, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. So I appreciate everybody's help in developing that prioritized list. I think that was a really big help for our efforts, and I think the presentation to Public Works went well. I don't know if any of you had the chance to watch that, but they were receptive. They were engaged. They asked some really great questions after the presentation. So there was certainly some interest on their part. And what we had proposed to do was take those prioritized lists. So what we did was break those lists into three different tiers. Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 of the potential value of those projects based on the scores you all had developed. And what we had proposed to do was take some 2018 bond funding that was dedicated towards bike and pedestrian projects and pay for the beginning design work of those Tier 1 projects, at least the on-street portion of those Tier 1 projects. If you remember, one of the projects was the Long Branch Trail, and that project, the budget for that project, the cost estimate for construction and for design is much higher than $400,000. So we've accounted for the design of that trail through a federal funding source that we set aside probably about a year ago, actually. So the remaining 5 projects in that first tier are the projects that we would hire a consultant to help us design. So I think that's where we stand with that. We don't have anybody under contract yet to help with that, but that was our recommendation, and there seemed to be concurrence on that. So my hope is that we can identify a consultant to assist with that, and then get them under contract and begin that design work. And once we begin that design work and we have some preliminary plans to share, I think that's when this group could certainly get involved again to help us determine if those preliminary designs are in line with what the bike plan really had identified, and make sure those plans are meeting the goals that this group has. So that's really where we stand with that. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about it, but I think the presentation went well, it was well received, and we're looking forward to getting started on the design.
Any questions for Matthew? I did go to the recording and watch the presentation, and there are some questions at the end. Anyone who wants to view that, Amy actually did a great blog on the Winston-Salem Cycling Network advocacy group. I didn't say that right, but close. Winston-Salem sent a blog out, and within that is a link to that, but we can get that out to the rest of the committee if they would like to view that presentation and specifically listen to the questions. All of the questions were raised by the council, and they were good questions. So it's interesting to get in their mind and to hear their thoughts so that we can become better advisors in the future on what we need to be communicating. So if you have time, I would suggest that would be a good thing to do. And Amy, thank you for sending that blog out to the cycling network, I think that helps the efforts that we're doing in the community.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the chat if anybody's interested. You can read all the blog and stuff, or you can just get the link to the video and watch it on your own.
Yeah, and it's real easy to do. So you'll see the recording up in the top left, and then underneath are the different agenda items. And if you just click on the agenda item itself, it goes directly to that presentation. So you don't have to sit there and listen to a 2-hour presentation. You can go directly to Matthew's presentation. Okay, so now this will probably take the remainder of the meeting, but calendar of activities and committee member updates. And I'm going to start with the calendar of activities coming up. You're going to say that you will never want Sharon to be gone again if this is what Carol's going to do. But I don't think that timing had anything to do with it. Maybe that's why Sharon decided not to be here today. So it didn't look like it was coming from her. But anyway, get your pencil out and paper. And as we go, I'll see if I can try to put some of these things in the chat window like Amy just did. But first, Friday, March 11th. So that's this Friday. If anyone has any availability and you would like to go on a field trip, currently the Piedmont Legacy Trails are doing their summit right now, and it's each Friday. The summit actually is virtual, but then in the afternoon following up the summit is a field trip. And last week, the topic of the day was how to increase or how to get trail volunteers. And it was a really interesting session. I did listen to the virtual part of it. I did not go participate in their field trip after that was over. It was a hike on one of the Madison County trails, I think. This week, we are fortunate enough to be recognized as the field trip. I don't think I wrote down what Friday's topic is, the virtual segment piece, but from 2 to 5 in the afternoon, the hosts for the event are Triad Ego Adventures, and Matthew will be leading an e-bike or regular bike tour field trip along Salem Lake. So anyone that wants to join, it is open. I think you do have to register. Thank you, Amy, for that. So she just put the link out there so you can go see the information. And if you're interested in participating in that field trip, please register. So any questions on that topic? All right.
I can add,
Carol,
if I could just add something to that. So the topic for this week is, it's titled Thinking Bigger State and Regional Trail Planning. So I'm talking about the Great Trail State Plan. And one of the topics is the evolution of regional trails network with Brett Baranak from the Carolina Thread Trail, which has been extremely successful. So it should be a great topic. And then in the afternoon, the bike tour, we are going to start at Triad Eco Adventures and go up the Strollway, talk about the project there along the Strollway, talk about the Strollway Bridge and the Business 40 Salem Parkway project, continue north on the Strollway, talk about the private development with Collidium and how that's being connected to the trail network, and then go over to the Innovation Quarter, talk about, again, the coordination between the private development and trails and NCDOT rail and all the different partners that were involved with the development of the Long Branch Trail, even talking about extending that north, and then continue back south along the Long Branch Trail to the Salem Creek Greenway and talk about NCDOT's Research Parkway, Salem Creek Connector Project, and how we coordinated with NCDOT with the Salem Creek Greenway improvements and the Long Branch Trail connectivity. So there's a lot of different agencies, NCDOT and the city and private development that's all kind of contributing to make this a good well-connected trail network that actually gets people to interesting destinations and important destinations. So that's kind of the gist of the tour, but I'd certainly welcome any of you to join and assist with that if you'd like.
Thank you, Matthew.
How do you need assistance?
I think, what I could probably use is, one or two people just to keep the group together. If you all are interested in that, there should be a group of, say, 10 or so participants from the summit, and it would be great just to have a couple people to assist with that and keep everybody together. So just reach out to me. Feel free to email or call if you have any interest in that.
Thank you, Matthew. All right, the next one we do need 2 volunteers for. It's Creek Week Rides, March 26th and 7th. Actually, we need 4 volunteers, two for each of the days, and it's at 1 o'clock. March 26th and 7th at 1 o'clock. And I actually have created a volunteer sheet, and I will post that on Google Docs and send that out to each of you so that you can sign up on that if you'd like. But Matthew will be leading those Creek Week rides, and a little bit of assistance is needed to kind of follow up the trail of the riders to make sure everybody stays up with the group, and just to maybe answer additional questions or help people out. All right. The third event is Piedmont Earth Day Fair. It is April 23rd. I also have a volunteer sheet for this. The time of the fair is from 10 to 4. The sign-up sheets that I have run in 2-hour shifts starting at 9:30 a.m. just to make sure that we have someone there each of those shifts. I will sign up from 2 to 4. I have a conflict earlier in the day for that. But I'll put that sign-up sheet. Actually, it's one sign-up sheet with Creek Week at the top and the Piedmont Earth Day Fair at the bottom. The city is a sponsor. They'll have a tent. We'll be helping to man that tent and focus in on bicycle pedestrian. And we'll have some of the old brochures that we have utilized in the past. Phase 2 will be focusing in on some of those brochures and updating those to make them more inclusive, to update them with current information. So that'll come later, but right now we've got quite a bit of old brochures and pamphlets to use, so we'll be passing those out at this fair.
Carol, can I add real quick? So Beers and Gears has been doing valet bike parking for the past several years. We're excited to be back in person again. So if anybody wants to split their time volunteering, maybe sometime at the table with the city and helping park bikes, we also do tune-ups and, like a bike safety quiz and talk about all the different like rides and clubs and trails. It's somewhat duplicative of the city table in some ways, but the more we can push stuff to people, the better. But if anybody's interested in helping with valet parking or know someone who's good with like just basic tune-up stuff, we're not fixing people's bikes entirely, but if there's a little squeak or something, we can adjust the tensioner screw or something. So if anybody's interested in that, you can let me know. But I'm excited we're going to be in person because the Earth Day Fair is really well attended, and it's a really great opportunity to meet a lot of people and talk to them, and they're all interested in being more outdoors and environmentally friendly. So it's a great audience. So I'm glad we're going to be present for that.
Thank you, Amy, for that additional push. Any questions? All right, again, I'll get those volunteer sheets out there on Google Doc, or if you have any difficulty with that, just reach out to me and I'll make sure your name gets on there. For the month of April, we would like to begin to collect information from some of the bike shops around town. As you know, we've been making a concerted effort to reach out to other BPACs across the state. And in a month, in the last month or maybe month before last, we talked about also doing information gathering sessions with some of the businesses around town. So this is kind of part of phase one, kind of part of phase two, but also collecting information so that we can get a better understanding of what our community thoughts, needs, and how we can connect better to some of the businesses around town and help them distribute safety information and things like that. So a couple of things we talked about was doing the information gathering session of the business owners of the bike shops and running shops in town. But this is specifically focused on the bike month, setting up for bike month. But there are 11 bike shops, which is hard to believe, within Winston-Salem, and then there's one part of that 11 is one in Clemens and one in Louisville, so that there are 11 bike shops, and we thought we could maybe split those bike shops up among the committee members and take the pamphlets that we currently have, set up appointments with the business owners, and when we go out to deliver the pamphlets and ask if they'll keep them on their front desk and give them out to new bike owners or someone coming in to buy some bicycle equipment or even to get their bike repaired, they can have those pamphlets and safety brochures available to their clients, and then also meet with that business person and gather information from them that we can then glean to understand what the needs and wants and desires are of the community, and also understand how we can partner or work with those bike shops to get information out to the citizens within Winston-Salem. So first would like feedback, comments, thoughts on doing that. And if you're supportive, then I also have a volunteer sheet for that, which I'll send out. And we can begin to meet with the different bike shop owners across the city. Everyone's quiet.
Hey, I was going to say, I think that's a great idea. I'd be happy to go to the one in Louisville. I live in Louisville, but I can't place it. I know the one in Clemens where it's at.
This one said it was on Louisville Clemens Road. Louisville Clemens Road. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
I wonder if it is the one in Clemens on the main, and that's still Louisville Clemens Road. I don't know.
There is Bespoke Cyclery on Shallowford Road, Louisville, and then there is Clemens Bicycle at 2703 Louisville Clemens Road.
Okay.
I don't know that Bespoke has got a physical location yet, but coming soon.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I think that was a difficult one to find, Michael. Thank you for saying that.
They're right now set up as a mobile service shop, but I think a physical presence is on the way.
Okay. All right. So if everyone's in favor, I'm sorry. Oh, thought I heard someone speaking. If everyone's in favor of that, then I'll go ahead and post that. I'll coordinate with Matthew to get some of the bike pamphlets. The ones that I looked at, Matthew, and you might recommend additional ones, but it was the bike lane parking notification, Bike Smart, and the bike wallet card. But I'll bring those to my house, and I'll put my address on the volunteer sheet, and you'll be able to pick those items up from me when you get ready to go out to meet with the bike shops. So I'll be the coordinator of the information. All right. And then we've already talked about Bike Month. So that reviews all of the calendar of activities that are coming up. Does anyone know of anything else to put on the calendar? Already overwhelmed, so That's enough.
Is there going to be a cycling classic this fall, and what the dates of those are going to be?
Michael,
Sorry, yes, I'm trying to get a video going. Yes, the classic is going to be September 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th this year. Yeah, and that is in full steam ahead planning process right now.
excellent. Thank you.
Michael, if there's something I can do to help with that, let me know. I'll be glad to give you a hand with that.
I sure will. Thank you, Greg.
Joshua, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know that we have 8 minutes left. I know that you met with the Elkin Trail Association, so I didn't know if you would want to share any information on that.
Yes. So, yeah, I pulled out those notes. So I wanted to have a conversation maybe with you, Sharon, and Matthew. I talked with Dr. Bill Blackley. I grew up in Elkin, so it's a small world. He was my family doctor growing up, so we talked for an hour and a half. But this, they have a lot of great stuff going on up there. I don't know if anybody's been up there to the Elkin Trails that they're building, and they have groups from Charlotte, lots of people from Winston-Salem, the Triad that come down. So, and really, I think that the biggest takeaway I have is lots of partnerships that were already or became friendships. There's lots of neat stuff. They're building trails, so they'll have. He talked about they had one time 49 kids from the East Wilkes, which is a local school, like 10 miles away. Their high school honor society came out, and they were working on the trails with them. They have a local rental company, a company where you can rent equipment, who pretty much will just let them use equipment for free. So there's lots of grassroots stuff. Their promotion, they get on the local radio station. They have a 5-minute program each week where they're promoting it. They talked about the JCs, the Boy Scouts, senior projects, tourism authority. So just really a neat program. And what it started, and I can remember it a little bit because I'm from there. There was I think it was a fiber cement plant or some factory. This is totally unrelated, was going to come in, and a group of concerned citizens formed a group to oppose it. And then out of that, it just kind of blossomed into, really looking at three things. They talked about businesses in the community. It's a community that used to be big in textiles. So they kind of, how could they change that? How could they up the appearance of their downtown? And then what could they do, with trails? And they have taken an old lumber store that I remember as a kid and now made it this visitor center chamber place is downtown near the railroad tracks. And they've it's really interesting. Also how and Dr. Blackley, he's at least I know he's in his 70s, but a lot of the people that started it now, some have passed, some have gotten older, but they're continuing to get new blood in and just keeping that energy going. So I would love to a group of us, I would love to go up just to reconnect. A lot of the people on the board I know, either I went to school with or I know from the community, but then they've had new people come in and just really doing a lot of great things. And I'm not doing it justice. Like I said, we talked 2 times over 2 days for over an hour and a half. So.
That's great. Thank you, Joshua, for that. There's only 4 minutes left, and I know that I don't have enough time, but I have met with both Raleigh and Greensboro in the last month. So we now have data on Durham, Charlotte, Raleigh, and Greensboro. I actually have an interest in continuing conversations with a couple of more cities. The other 2 would be Wilmington and Cary. I've reviewed their websites, and there's a lot going on in both of those cities. I have not discussed that with Matthew to get contacts yet, but they do look like interesting and perhaps different than the other BPACs that we've already had conversations with. I will tabulate the information that I've gathered from Raleigh and Greensboro and put that in the Excel spreadsheet that I've started to build out so that we have each of those side by side with each of the questions. And I'll get that in a Google Doc and send that out to everyone so that they can have it. I thought it was maybe a little bit too much to try to go over in this meeting because we did have a guest speaker. So maybe we can focus, instead of a presentation from an outside person this next time, we can focus on the information that we've gathered from the other BPACs in our next meeting and get some ideas for where we go in the future with the information that we've gathered. All the conversations have been interesting. There are a lot of similarities and there are also differences, as you've kind of heard in the other two that I've shared in prior meetings. But I do think that it is good to gather this information. I ran into Kevin Monday last week, just in passing on the sidewalk. And in that, I was sharing with him that we were gathering information from other cities. And he said, oh, that is really great. He said, one of the things that the councilmen like to hear is what other cities are doing. That really piques their interest because they want to make sure that we stay competitive and stay up with the other cities, other large cities within the state of North Carolina. So I think it's to our advantage to have had these conversations. So anyway, any thoughts, any questions, and any other updates from anyone?
Carol, I would just add an additional update, if I have a moment. NCDOT is currently updating their state bike route system.
Thank you. I forgot that one.
Yeah, they're accepting feedback from the public right now. So I'm going to share a link in the chat box on how you all can share this information and provide comments to NCDOT. That the existing designations are about 40 years old, I believe. So obviously the state has changed significantly in those 40 years, and those routes need to reflect the changing development patterns in the state. So that's what they're working on right now. There's about another week or so that they're accepting input. And the final thing that I had to say was, Carol, you had mentioned this in passing earlier in the meeting, but we will be meeting in person again in April. So we will be meeting at City Hall in the committee conference room, which is on the second floor. But I will send out details about parking and access to that building and all the details you need prior to that meeting. So just be on the lookout for that information. I just wanted to give everybody a notice that we'll be back in person in April.
All right. If there are no further items, then thank you for coming today, and we'll adjourn.